I adored and adore Elizabeth. We just find it impossible to live together because our temperaments are both very high and very explosive. And I suppose, 13 years of such intensity with two people living together who adored each other as much as we did. It's at such a continual seething, boiling point that eventually it spills over. But there is no rancor, no animosity on either side.
But Burton's marriage to Susie did not last. He started drinking again, and his health deteriorated. They separated in 1982. Almost immediately, Burton met Sally Hay. He and Sally married the following year.
I look back on it now and I think, what the hell did I think I was doing here? But what I can say is I just adored this man. And I think he wanted someone just to look after him and be devoted to him.
But Burton could not make a complete break from Taylor, personally or professionally. In 1983, Elizabeth persuaded him to go back on stage, to co-star with her in Private Lives in New York. 20 years after Cleopatra, they could still bring out the press and the public. Burton knew the routine by heart, but he had grown weary of it.
One of the finest actors.
One of the finest.
Sorry.
March 15th, 1983. Elizabeth only 15 minutes late, but then spent 15 minutes doing her eyebrows. She stinks of garlic. Who has garlic for breakfast? She is also on something, because there are lines here and there which she can't say at all. Tells me twice an hour how lonely she is.
Richard understood it really well, that the audiences were going to see just then, for the titillation of them on stage together and sort of having been married and getting back together. And I just had to grin and bear it. It was difficult. I mean, the audiences were there to see Richard and Elizabeth.
What utter fools.
You feel like that too, do you?
I took the view that Elizabeth was always going to be part of Richard's life and part of my life. And in a way, I kind of thought, well, this was going to be the sort of real proving ground of, what the relationship is going to be from now on. And at the end of it, it was kind of, they were going to be friends, but, not in each other's pockets quite so much, but a healthy respect and a distance.
With the end of Private Lives, Burton was finally able to step out of his role as Mr. Elizabeth Taylor to begin a new career as a distinguished supporting actor.
Stand up straighter.
He could still arouse admiration.
Look me in the face.
And inspire dread.
I was very afraid of Burton's reputation. Not that I was afraid of working with him, but I was afraid of the fact that he would be drunk, that he would be impossible, and that it was more time than I could actually afford. But we were about 6 weeks into shooting by the time that we'd realized that we didn't have the second lead in the picture, and we were getting very near the time when we had to find our man. So we bit the bullet and went for him, and I'm very glad I did.
Look at you. You're rotting away. That is the last man. If you're human, that is humanity.
Well, it was rather sweet in a way, because he was much more afraid of doing the things he had to do than I was. I was the one that's being tortured, but removing a decayed tooth from my head gave him the complete heebie-jeebies. The rats, he was terrified of. So it was a kind of reversal of roles, in a sense. But of course, when it comes to performing it, he can turn on the cruelty, the coldness, the everything that Orwell would have expected him to turn on, and more.
He seemed to be able to give character and give profundity and give depth just by the inflections of his voice.
The law of gravity is nonsense. No such law exists.
But physically, he wasn't good.
And you think I float?
The vertebrae at the top of his neck had been compressing too much, and he had an operation on that, which had really debilitated the use of or taken away the use of his arms, so they're quite withered. So he was not at all strong.
How many fingers, Winston?
In the scene where he's torturing John Hurt and saying, how many fingers do you see? We had to have somebody underneath the table, literally holding his hand, otherwise his hand would have wandered all over the place. The only way I can describe him is he was like a sick old lion, who'd sort of, this big, powerful creature that was crawling away to die.
"1984 was Burton's last film. 4 weeks after shooting was completed, he was at home in Switzerland. On the evening of August 4th, he went to bed early, complaining of a headache. He never woke up. He had suffered a brain hemorrhage. The following day's newspapers summed up Burton's career with a familiar mix of awe and disappointment. Richard Burton had failed to fulfill his early promise as an actor, and in the end, he was defined much more by his private life than by his achievements.
Richard became a film star partly through his own gifts and talent, but partly his reputation was made by association with Elizabeth. And I think that he went into the relationship absolutely besotted by her. I'm not suggesting that his feelings for her weren't genuine. I think they were absolutely genuine. But that's not the way you go down in history as a deal-good.
I always got the impression that the Welsh mining community, the kind of hard man thing, weighed and preyed very heavily on him. And my own private theory, and it wasn't really a theory that, that I could prove or anything like that, but it was a hunch, was that he never really thought of acting as a man's game. And I think he kind of despised it for one reason or another, at the same time realizing that this is where his talents lay. And so consequently, I think in a sense, I think that's one of the reasons why he treated it as a sort of, well of money, and did certain things which he should never have done.
There were times when he'd say, why me? When he was thinking about the family or the other people in the village, why me? What was so different? Whereas I think when he was very young, he just took it as a given that he was different and he had this talent and he was going to go on and see whatever he could do. It's only later in life that he could look back and say, yeah, but where did I come from? Where did I spring from? And also, the other thing, he'd say, oh my goodness, did I really do all that? Did I really buy a private plane, and buy a yacht? Did I really do that?
It has puzzled me that I know at least, shall we say, over the years, about 20 actors who are every bit as accomplished as I am, and for the most part, I may say, far better looking, and the same size and weight and shape, with all the accoutrements of what one would think a star, for lack of a better word, should have: good voice, good presence, good eyes. And they haven't made it. And it always raises the long-gone, atavistic short hairs on the back of my vertebrae. And I can never quite figure it out, and I can only assume it's some sort of diabolical or even divine luck.
By Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yields me not if men my garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive.